Welcome to the Balance Protocol podcast. If you are looking to regain your health, get the most out of life, or even resolve a chronic disease that has been plaguing you for years, this is the place. During an era where countless people are feeling the weight of ill health and whose heads are spinning due to all the noise and confusion within the info space, Dr. Beck is here to cut through all that noise and misinformation, to bridge the gap between medicine, scientific research, and where everything should truly be centered within you. Backed with 2 decades of professional clinical experience, Dr. Beck applies a revolutionary systems biology called functional medicine, utilizing his powerful method called the Balance Protocol. Here, Dr. Beck will educate you on the root causes of disease, motivate you to take solid corrective actions in your life, and inspire you to reach the highest levels of well-being. He knows that at the end of the day, it is you, the patient, who holds the keys to your ultimate health and well-being. It's time for the Balance Protocol with Dr. Anthony G. Beck.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Balance Protocol podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony G. Beck. And in today's podcast, what I'm actually going to do is share with you an interview that I did with a very good friend of mine, Jefreaux Peairs, who is an individual who is really dedicated to a lot of the same causes that I am. And he's developing a website that's going to be available for the masses to be able to have a clearinghouse for solid and correct health information. I was actually flattered to be invited to be in his podcast and his interview circuit. So that way I could go on and share my background and a little bit about the Balance Protocol and my 2-3-5-8 framework that works within the Balance Protocol. So today I'm going to share that with you, and so sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you on the inside.
All right, what's happening, guys and girls? Welcome to the Hangout podcast, whatever it is. It's more of a Skype conversation.
Yeah, we do all of them, so they all kind of mix together.
Whatever technology is the best one to work. So, my name is Jefreaux Peairs. I am the founder of truthaboutwellness.com, and today I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Anthony G. Beck. What's up, Dr. Beck? How you doing today?
Well, man, loving it. Stuck inside in this lovely sunny day in Florida. Of course, I see you got some sunshine over your shoulders there, too.
Yep, I'm on the opposite coast, so we're representing both coasts. East side, west side.
East side, west side.
Yep, for sure.
Good stuff.
So, wanted to get on here and just have a conversation with you about the topic of wellness, about what you're up to. We've known each other for a little while now, and obviously I'm learning a ton from you.
Yeah, good stuff.
And you've got some great perspectives on everything whenever it comes to wellness. Why don't you give us a little background on your practice and your history and how you got into this whole thing?
Sure. Well, at a ripe old age of 42, I've been practicing my field, which is called functional medicine now, for a little over about 20 years. And, my whole premise is I'm all about the truth of wellness as well, too. And, I've always had a penchant for, sorting through the myths and really, getting down to what really works when it comes to disease resolution and health maintenance and that kind of fun stuff. But, I actually started out in school. I was actually going to be in the Navy. I was actually going to go fly jets. This was back during the Tom Cruise and the Top Gun stuff. Yeah. And so I had a relationship changed, ended up getting engaged to be married, and instead of going to work for Uncle Sam, I had to, make a choice between her and the military. So I chose her. And we had a 16-year run, but the good thing about that is it set my life onto a different field. And of course, I've always loved health and food and nutrition and things like that. Actually put myself through college working as a chef for many years. So me and food got along really well.
That's cool.
There's a little while there where I had a little extra, little chub, but well, you work those kind of work weeks in a 50, 60 hours in a kitchen and all that food, you just can't help but to sample everything.
Man, I love food.
Oh man. I'm like a fat boy on cake. It's just really, really good stuff. But, so nutrition was my first deal. And so I began to study sports medicine, exercise physiology, and nutrition. That was kind of set me towards that. And then going on.
Was that to work off all the food that you were consuming?
A little bit. I never was an overeater. I mean, I grew up in a single wide trailer out in the country, so I always loved veggies and barbecue because I'm a North Carolina boy. But
cooking.
That's it. I learned to cook. That's for sure. And so where it boiled down to is learning to be healthy was different than nutrition. So in other words, the physical aspects are not the same as the internal aspects. But so I just kind of evolved from there and went on to become a naturopathic doctor and also a doctor of Oriental medicine. And then within those fields, of course, we embrace different systems and how everything is connected. And then back in about 1993, 94, I found functional medicine. And functional medicine was very new at that particular time. But I liked the principles behind it. And it was just a different way of looking at the body with an emphasis on what we call systems biology and how the body is all infinitely connected. So that's kind of what started me into looking at the body and from a very integrative medicine point of view, to where everything is related. It's not just a pill for every ill and just treating symptoms. We always want to know about root cause, and fundamental to that was food is medicine. So I love that kind of stuff. And so when you do things to your body, there's repercussions for it. And so learning to solve that riddle for I was a personal trainer at first, and so when I was working with them getting their bodies physically fit and things of that nature and teaching them how to feed, you'll come across people that are going to have what we call diseases, who have headaches or acne or musculoskeletal pain. And there was more to it than just physically working out or seemingly eat healthy. There was deeper things that we had to get into. So that intrigued me into that particular world, and so functional medicine coming into my life made a difference in the world of being able to answer those questions for those guys. So that's kind of the down and dirty, the cliff notes.
So if someone would have experienced any of those issues normally going to like a Western doctor, what would have happened to those folks? What's the usual outcome?
Well, I think we all know that story, that book, that movie, if you will, that drama. Well, the thing is, we're conditioned. That's what we do. That's what doctors are for. You have a problem, you go seek somebody for it. It's just like, well, if you have a plumbing problem, you call the plumber. You need something fixed, you call a handyman. So if you have something go wrong in your health, we're told, well, go to the doctor. Well, the doctors that are in what I call conventional medicine. It's really not East or West anymore in this global world that we have, but they're taught to quickly truncate your symptoms into a diagnosis and then treat that diagnosis. And the reason that is because they have to only spend a little bit of time. I call it the statistic is actually 7.6 minutes. That's what the insurance reimbursement plan will give you. It's literally it's a number. And so in 7.6 minutes they have to hear your complaint, do a differential diagnosis, and then give you something for it. Because of course their toolbox is really limited in pharmaceutical medications. It's the medicine cabinet. In 7.6 minutes, you can't even tell somebody how to make pasta, for crying out loud, or how to properly wash vegetables to get the junk off of them. So they're really only going to get down to a recommendation of a pharmaceutical medication or a referral to another specialist, and then after that, working or not working will determine if you get the next tool, which is a metal tool we call a scalpel. So that really is what kind of happens to folks, and people are conditioned it. You go to the doctor and you are expecting them to give you something for it. So it's not the docs are the evil people. It's just again what they've been conditioned to do. We get programmed like that on TV all the time. You can't watch TV without a drug commercial. And they say, ask your doctor if this is right for you. And people go, oh, let me go ask if it's right for me. And he's going to go, what do you think he's going to do? I just so happen to think this matches your symptoms. It's right for you. So that's what tends to happen in the conventional mechanism. I think we've all experienced that. The difference for me is that I want to know all the things that contributed to that person getting to that point. One person's migraine is not another person's migraine. One person's allergy is not another person's allergy. What are all the things that are culminating in that person's environment, and what they're eating or not eating, if they're exercising or not exercising, if they're exposed to certain chemicals or microbial infections and different stuff like that. We need to know more about the patient. And so, today that's kind of missing from that model, really. So I call it the name it, blame it, tame it game. They want to just
totally.
give it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I could see it. Actually, I was just talking to my mom the other day, and we've been having a lot of conversations about health and wellness, and she's been dealing with hypothyroidism and some different ailments and stuff like that. Yeah. And recently, she had a spike in her blood pressure. When she went to the doctor, he said, "Oh, your blood pressure has gone up," and he immediately wanted to put her on some blood pressure medication and all that stuff.
That's it.
And wasn't really interested in getting to what's the cause of it? What was it that caused your blood pressure to increase from the last visit to this visit?
Yeah.
He didn't really want to get down into the root cause of it. He was just interested in writing a prescription for whatever that medication was. And so my mom obviously she wanted to know what the root cause was so she could make adjustments in her lifestyle and her diet and whatnot. And she started doing some natural things, and she actually refused to take the blood pressure medication.
Yeah.
And she just went and got a checkup the other day, and a lot of the stuff that she's done has had a positive impact on her blood pressure, and it's coming back into a good range.
And that's amazing. See, and that's the whole thing. And I like to caveat and let people know I'm all for the drugs. I mean, Don't get me wrong. I think they have a very powerful effect. They work.
Well, there's a time and a place for them, but that's
right.
Not the automatic go-to mechanism every single time.
Right. And docs, they do their job. I mean, they are specialists. I always say that specialists kill the business, because you'll go to a different doc for each symptom of each system that you have.
Right.
Women have one for their girly parts, and guys, we have one for our guy parts, and you have one for your heart, and one for your ear, nose, and throat, and you got one for your skin, and one for your GI tract. And the thing is, they all have that same toolbox, and they're not doing an evil thing. Here's a pill for that particular symptom. Right. And so they want to give you relief, because things like, say, hypertension, if left unchecked over time, it can be deadly. So I'm not saying those aren't options. I just think those are just temporary loans that can be effective while you continue to look for the root causes. And I actually am one of those people that say, listen, if you don't be afraid to take medications. There's a lot of people out there, and I'm sure you've run into this too, is I'm not taking any drugs. What, do you have a headache? No, I'm not even going to take a Tylenol. Well, I don't think that's really wise. I mean, we want to remediate pain and give relief to the patient. We don't want the body to be stuck in that physiology. Those are there for. That's what they're there for. So I think it's a wise approach to actually use them prudently while you continue to search for what brought you to that point. It's kind of like coaching a team or working with an executive group or something at work. I mean, you got to problem solve. You just don't go, okay, well, we don't have revenue, let's just get a loan. You go, what can we do to get our business more successful? Same thing in your health. There's things you can do, and she actually did that. So that's what's awesome, is that she actually took an active role in her health and didn't relegate it to somebody. But thank goodness she is still seeking competent medical care. That's really important, because quite frankly, that's the difference, is when you spend multiple years, when we go through medical school, and for me it worked out to about 11 years worth total, you learn clinically to see a lot of things. You make rounds, or you see tens of thousands of patients over the years. That's a whole lot of dry rehearsals, and that's a whole lot of case study, and you get a finer ear for it, like an artist does for a paint. Their brush strokes or their music notes or how they compose, looking at the body differently. So it's great that there's a lot of information out there, but learning how to apply it is what's really the key. And I'm glad she got some relief. One of the things I usually will also say is, once you get that relief, don't stop there. You really want to keep looking. It's what I actually call the happy slappy syndrome. Well, problem solved. We don't have to worry about it. The sink was overflowing, and we sopped up all the water, so we don't have to worry about why it backed up. You gotta keep looking. So get solid answers is the quest.
Right. Yeah, that's. I think that a lot of times people in the wellness space want to villainize Western doctors and stuff like that. It's not that the doctors don't care. It's just that the doctors are educated a certain way, and it's a total shift in their paradigm to look at it from this, and they've been trained to, automatically diagnose and find a specific pharmaceutical medication that will handle this.
Yeah.
But I think a lot more doctors are realizing that there are additional options available, and it's really about teaching the mainstream public how to be aware of your health and get the truth and the facts that you need for yourself, as opposed to just relying on what the doctor says and going to the doctor and, hey, take this pill and you're gonna be all right, and making them, I guess, their quote unquote God.
Yeah.
So
well, and that's just it. The thing is they're trained to operate in such a way, and that's just it. Like you could take somebody who, like, say, most athletes, they usually don't just play one sport. So you say, well, in the springtime I'm gonna play some baseball, and come summer and fall I'm gonna play some football or some things. And as we're going through high school, I didn't actually do that. I actually worked, but most of my friends and people I know, they play multiple sports. Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh man, you're gonna not let me out of that one. The biggest weight I ever got to was 185, but I was only about 5'5" at the time. So yeah, wow. I was a little portly. We won't keep talking about it. It's fun. Well, hey, I've been there. I got little stretch marks on my booty. I ain't afraid to say it. They were back there from the day. But thank goodness I extended my height. So, but the thing is what I was saying is docs are trained in a certain way. So it's like you. But at the same time, they're not the source of information that people think they are. And I know that's scandalous to say, but like in commercials, they say ask your doctor, or before you take this multivitamin, talk to your doctor. Well, that's the last thing to do. In other words, if I have a problem with my electrical, I'm not going to ask a plumber, even though they both work in the same walls, right? They're familiar with that kind of a thing. Plumbers are trained specifically in that particular art, and electricians in theirs, and so are carpenters, do things like that. So they all have their place. And so I think it's a big mistake to think that your source of information is at your physician's office when it comes to a lot of things. And even if it is, let's give them a get-out-jail-free card, and they have all the time in the world to study all the recent literature. You get 7.6 minutes. The chance of you spending 15 or 20 to talk about whether this multivitamin is right for me, or what do you think about these superfoods. They just don't know. They don't have time for that. It's just like an electrician studying about the new adhesive for PVC pipe. They just don't mix. Right? This is examples. So it really comes down to seeking the answers for yourself in multiple places, and knowing that it's okay to understand that your physician, the one who cares, and I love my patients, that care and love for you, they don't always have the answers.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's get into that. Let's talk about what happens when someone comes to see you. What do you typically have people that come to you that have a specific ailment, and they've tried gone the Western medicine route with conventional doctors, and they haven't had relief? Or is it just people that are more in tune with looking at ways that they can alleviate the issues naturally, or what? What type of person usually ends up in your office?
Yeah, a little bit of all those. Well, my typical patients have complex chronic disease. In other words, I do acute care. Make no mistake about it. People, once I establish a relationship with the patient, they're like, oh, hey, listen, I have a headache or a muscle pain, or I sprung my ankle or something like that. So, like in Florida, I'm a licensed primary care provider, so people they do come. Like, well, I have a headache, or I've had an allergic reaction to something, or musculoskeletal pain, little acute stuff that you get, things of that nature. But most of the time, the crux of what I work with is things that have been around for a while. And see, that's just it. Today's medical model is acute care only. We're second to none, and I mean that in the world, when it comes to if you have a heart attack, if you need emergency surgery, if you have a broken limb, or something that you need to sustain your life right then and there. Our ER docs are they're just way out of my league. This is what they do. It's just, I have such a respect for it. So that type of care, and when it comes to our hospitals and stuff and sustaining life, unmatched. Where we dynamically are at the bottom of the rung is in chronic disease, because they apply that same acute care model to chronic problems. You can't, if you go in to your doctor and you say, hey, listen, I started getting this migraine this week, that might be one particular fix they can help you with. But if you are constantly plagued with it, you're going to have to go from specialist to specialist. We're going to send you to the neurologist, and then we're going to take you to the endocrine guy. Then we're going to check your gyno, and she's going to give you some horse hormones and different fun things like that. Trying to figure out why you have a migraine. And it's been going on for months, if not years. And again, the toolbox is still the same. What pill can we give for the ill, whether it's been there for a week or if it's been there for a year? So patients that come see me generally are byproducts of the manifestation of a broken down chronic care system that applies acute care. So when they come to see me, the first thing I'm going to do, of course, the intake forms are extensive. I'm at about 40 pages worth. And the reason is, and it's not all the disclosures and CYA medical stuff that, I promise not to, make horns grow out of your head or chop your foot off. But it's to get more information about who the patient is. I get back all the way to their childhood, to immunizations, to use of steroids, anti-inflammatories, to antibiotics, what they eat, where they grew up, the water they drink, their environmental exposures, their sociological factors, stress, are they in a healthful home? We talk about real personal questions when it comes to medical background of what their family is doing and things like that, medical family history, but also use of medications or recreational drugs or what they're actually eating. I want an extensive knowledge of what their diet is, what they're sticking into their inner tube. And so I get a lot of background information on the patient. I don't work off a previous diagnosis. People say, Doc, I've been seeing these specialists for, IBS or Crohn's disease or allergies or rheumatoid arthritis or my diabetes, and we'll talk about that my term hopefully here in a little bit, and it's just not getting any better. Well, I don't start going, my brain doesn't instantly hear that previous diagnosis. I see the patient in front of me, male or female, what their age is, who they are, and I actually literally have them tell me their story. That's for the first place we do, because I start eliciting a story back from my patients. And then what I do is one of the techniques that I've used for years is to, once I hear that story, I literally give it back to them. I say, let me tell you your story back. And when I don't have the story correct, or I'm missing a component, or if you think of something else, stop me, correct me, or, fill in the blanks. And number one, that really makes the patient feel good. And I don't do it to make them feel good. I'm doing it so I make sure I can really get to the root cause, because I want to hear that story. I want to read that novel. But they have to tell me their story. I'm like their biographer, right? So once I get,
awesome. That's how long does that take you to do that typically?
Well, first time with the patient, depending upon how complex and chronic, in other words, timeline and things like that. I usually will know that once they tell me before we start the storytelling is to get an assessment of the case. It's at least an hour. Sometimes it's 2 hours.
Right.
And sometimes we actually have to, hey, can I go take a break, Doc? I go tinkle and I come back, and that's really kind of how it goes. I've done that too. I'm like, okay. So hour to hour and a half is the typical. Yeah, because,
And that's a lot of work for them too, just to recall a lot of that stuff that, if you got somebody who's 30, 40, 50 years old, they have to look back at many years and actually recall quite a bit of information.
And I kind of refer to myself as like a, crime scene investigator, a CSI agent of health, because it's the little clues. Watch any drama like that, and they go, man, if only. Like one of my favorite ones is 24. Jack Bauer. I don't know if you watch that, but his seasoned ability in the field of being involved in so much crazy stuff allows him to go, don't do that. Let's take a look at this, or have you thought about this, or go check that. And that's where a real seasoned caregiver can get into it. And again, it comes back to that time. You can't do it without time with the patient. And then oftentimes patients don't think that certain little clues in their life story make any difference at all. And they'll go, when I was a kid, I took antibiotics a lot. And they're like, well, that was 30 years ago. And I go, well, hold on a second. There's the genetic components. A big part of what I do is what we call nutrigenomics or epigenetics, and which is the ability of the body, or what response of your DNA in the body to actually turn on or off certain genes. Now, we have advanced functional testing now. We can actually do this genetic testing and actually find these markers. We've identified them. But the thing is even going so far back, if you can turn on a light switch, you can turn on that gene to express itself, and it'll be on until you turn it off.
Interesting.
So turning it on based upon some type of environmental exposure back then, or a trauma, or a deficiency, it could be all kinds of things. We need to figure that out. So I really try to elucidate the facts of that most people don't think about, could be little clues. And sometimes they're not. They're like, well, I grew up around a bunch of German Shepherds. We had 10 of them. And I'm thinking, well, that might not be a big deal. But then if it's them plus a microbe or a parasite, do they all live in the house, or are they outdoor dogs? That you can modify that weird example there of if it does impact the story or not.
Wow, interesting.
But the point is that's just it. So that it takes a lot of time and really encouraging the patient to really divulge all the goodies. So it really creates a real interesting partnership and a friendship. That's the other thing, man. I really connect to my patients. I value them so much, and you have to respect that and be mindful of it if you're going to get them to tell you certain intimate things.
Well, that's pretty cool too, because I'm sure it helps them get to know themselves a lot better too.
Oh yeah.
Which empowers them to really manage their own wellness, because they're forced to tell the story and to actually think through like the different things that you're asking. So that's
a brilliant statement,
in and of itself.
Yep, wow. That's brilliant, and I'm so glad you said that, because it literally is. Because look, as clinicians, when we start talking with the patient, it's very difficult, because then you got to be careful what you ask for, right? Because what I call the sting of accountability doesn't feel so good. And I tell people, I say, listen, you're the boss. I work for you. I'm your, consultant, and you don't want me to sugarcoat stuff. If you want me to help you do your stuff, kind of like in your field, that's what you do, is you grow people and make them better business people and encourage them to help. You experience the same thing. So I'm in great company. So I think people can also relate to this, that if you're going to really give good data, people have to tell you what's going on in their life. So, but when you do get that information and you have to give it back to them, it also empowers me with more, I'm going to say, leverage, to where you can go, hey, listen, between you and me, you've told all your docs that you only have, whiskey one at night. And the thing about it is that that you have more than that. Pardon my phone there. Fax is coming in.
That's right.
So the thing is what ends up happening is people don't realize that the difficult challenge really is getting them to mediate a change. And the only way I can do that is to point those fingers back at the patient in a way that they grasp and go, yeah, you're right. I need to give and take here, and by getting that information from it really allows me to hold them accountable, is the point.
Oh, that's cool. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So let's get into your approach. What about so you go through this investigative process whenever you start first seeing someone. What about what type of testing and stuff do you do in addition to that? Because I know a lot of times you get very limited type of testing whenever you go to a conventional doctor.
Oh, sure.
But I know you do a lot more extensive testing to get the proper data to work with.
No, right on. You said it exactly right. You got to have information that you can't share verbally, or by clinical observation, or doing a physical exam. There's the unknown of what's going on in your blood chemistry, what your liver's doing, what your genes are doing. So yeah, we have a huge battery of diagnostic laboratory assessments, and they can range from anything from if somebody's complaining of depression or fatigue or insomnia. These things have cellular enzymatic reactions that are involved in those. I mean, it's biology, for crying out loud. Well, yeah, so when it comes to testing, that's the thing. We have a big toolbox when it comes to taking a look at what's really going on in the patient's body, things that it can't tell us, that they can't tell us without the body really giving it its voice. So we have a range of tests. We call them functional diagnostics or functional laboratory assessments. But they can range from different parts of the body, what we're actually going to take a look at based upon, of course, the data that we collected, their story being retold. So if somebody comes in and complaining of things like depression or insomnia or fatigue, and things that are real common these days, there are underlying physiological reasons for that. And so we can take a look at certain biomarkers. So, like for instance, say like depression, there are markers in the urine, like 5-hydroxyindole acidic acid, that actually is the biomarker of serotonin. We can actually do a urinalysis and take a look at that organic acid and see if it's elevated or if it's deficient, and get an idea of what's going on there. Fatigue can be related to if a person's methylating or not, what their folate status is, or their B12. Well, we have organic acids for those, so we test that in the urine. We just don't take a look at how much is floating around in the blood. We look at the functional organic acid to that particular nutrient. So we've got things like that. Digestive stool analysis, where we do look at the poop test, and we screen it for latent microbial infections. We also we can take a look at how much good bacteria they might have in there. We can do tests for leaky gut to take a look at some biomarkers that are, that are released when the body loses its, absorption, a bit like zonulin. We have immunological markers to take a look and see if there's reactions to certain things like gluten or dairy or other food allergies and things of that nature, or in cross-reactivity to other foods. We call that molecular mimicry. Some people say, well, I'm eating gluten-free, but I'm still having reactions. Well, there are certain proteins that are very similar shape to gluten, so even when you get rid of those, your body still thinks the gluten's in there. So we do tests like that. Of course, we do conventional tests to assess certain metabolic functions in the blood, and when we take a look at things like thyroid, we're going to do complete panels of thyroid, not just TSH and total T4. We really want to look at antibodies and active factors there. Nutritional testing, where one particular micronutrient test I love to do on patients is to basically cultivate their cells, their lymphocytes, and put them in the presence and absence of nutrients and see how they grow. There's just a whole bunch of different ones. So every aspect that we take a look at in the body really has to be assessed independently, but then as the total story comes together, how can they influence one another? So like we might take a look at what's going on with some gastrointestinal testing, because we know that serotonin is actually regulated in the bowel. So it's not in your head, it's in your butt, is what I tell my patients. And so if you're suffering from depression, it might be something going on in the bowel. It's that interconnectivity. So these tests really allow us to connect the dots of these root causes. So that's what's really neat about testing, is we look a lot deeper. We're not fixated on just blood tests and imagery like MRIs and fun stuff. There's places for those. We certainly need those as components, but we really look at the functional tests down in the cellular level. And then of course genes. We can screen for certain single nucleotide polymorphisms, as they're called, and see if you have a broken MTHFR gene to where you don't methylate. So you might be one of those people that needs to increase or either supplementation correctly, there's a right and wrong way to do that, or allow us to make a individualized therapeutic dietary consideration by increasing green leafy vegetables. So if you're going to be eating vegetables, we want you to lean more towards that. Or maybe you have a problem in one of your cytochromes that doesn't allow you to detoxify things well, or you detoxify them too much. So we can take a look at the genetics and really give you answers there, which incidentally is what's really cool is that so many people will say, well, my doc said it runs in the family, it's genetic. And I go, well, do you know what gene did they identify? And they go, well, no, it just runs in the family, so it has to be genetic. And I go, well, hold on a minute. Guess what? We can actually look at genes. We know a lot of genes that actually can be assessed, very simple, and tell you if that truly is the gene that's associated with it or not, because I know one thing is not the same for another. So yeah, it might run in the family, but if you don't express that gene, then it won't turn on. Or if it's turned on, you could turn it off. So you don't have to feel that you're at a dead-end road because your parents gave you this genetic code, and it's the catastrophe theory that you're just bound and determined to have the same disease that ran in your family. No, you have a lot more empowerment than that.
That's pretty awesome, because I know a lot of people think that automatically they're going to, oh, my grandpa and my dad had heart disease, so I'm automatically going to have heart disease, and they believe that it's a generational thing that is automatic. They don't realize that they have control over whether that's something that is active in their personal life.
Sure. Well, and actually, it's true on both ends, because if your grandparents did something, and your parents did, and now you're doing it, if you eat the same recipes, if you move or not move the same way, if you live in the same physical environment, you make the same repeated pattern, well, of course you're going to get the same pattern.
Well,
but
that's usually how they learn it from generation to generation, because they saw their parents or grandparents do it a certain way.
That's right. Nothing wrong with that. I'm glad my mom handed down her fried chicken recipe for me, right? So grateful for that. But here's the difference. But what if I'm, don't do that? What if my environment's different? Like my grandpa, actually from Nashville, Tennessee, he was a pharmacist. Heffernan's Apothecary. Back then, they were the actual doctors. That's actually an interesting thing. They were actually that. And he was an alcoholic. We're Irish, right? So, and then guess what? And he smoked. My mom, Irish, of course, alcoholic and smoked. Well, for me, I don't do those things. So automatically, even if I do have that genetic predisposition, my output is not going to be the same. Right. So at the end of the day, if you break the pattern, you're going to get a different result. I mean, that's what the whole beauty of life is that pattern disruption and creating new ones. So you got to identify it and then move forward. So you don't have to be stuck in the diagnosis of your forebearers. Set yourself free. Make concerted decisions. And then the double-edged sword on that is people go, well, no one in my family ever got it, so I can just do this, and that. And
that's a good point.
Right? Yeah. Well, that doesn't work either, because remember, once that DNA starts to change, you are a unique individual. You are a category of one, and you have to realize that we don't have data on you except from you. And it's just that one little thing that makes you different can also accommodate some other places on your chromosomes that actually equal that you can't afford to do that. Yeah. So
that's one of the things I really like about the way that you approach things is you look at everybody in their uniqueness of, okay, what's unique to you, and you actually do the testing and you get all the data and provide that to your patients, so that they understand their uniqueness, and so they don't just get caught up in all these these trends of specific diets and whatever health trend or wellness trend is out there. They don't get caught up in that, because it's not really the best fit for their unique makeup.
That's it. That is the central theme to my program called the Balance Protocol. I don't tell people what to do. I give them protocols and methods to discover what equals for them. It's the N equals 1 factor. In other words, they are their best experiment. You can get all this information, but we all have experience. We've applied something, it didn't work out like everybody else, or our neighbor said this worked or that, or man, you bloggers or different online forums or stuff like that will say these things are great, or try this and it doesn't work. And that's the reason why, because you're that category of one. You got to always remember that. Ultimately, no physician can or scientific study can tell you because they didn't study you, and all the infinite variables that make you. And that's my biggest quest in life, is to get people to embrace that pure and simple truth that is universal and is irrefutable, and that is the essential theme that should come into their life is that what works for everybody else doesn't work for me. And you can't be told to this works, or this drug is right for you, or this herb is right for you, or this diet is right for you, because it's not you. Right. So it's the quest, it's the protocol, it's the method of getting to that discovery of you. Heck, you might be a vegan, might work great for you, doesn't work for Dr. Beck. Paleo, same thing, that might be great for you, that doesn't work for me. I need both. And so I know what works, because I looked at the hard questions and the things I couldn't answer. I looked at my genes and my biomarkers, and I am free of any of that stuff. And it's so empowering. It's those highest levels of well-being that I want to inspire people to get. But you got to know how. So
real quick on that. So you do all the testing on yourself as well too. Like, so you get the lab test for yourself, and you get the data on your own physical health. And obviously whenever you work with people virtually as well, correct? So you don't necessarily have to see people in your office. You do a lot of stuff virtually with people across the country who are who want to live in, I guess, optimal wellness.
That's it.
Bring out the best version of themselves possible, right?
Oh, sure. And I do require my patients to, get physical exam hands-on. Doctors need to remember that in the day you need to examine your patients hands-on, right? And see things that I can't see. So I really rely on doing that, and I actually insist my patients do that. But yes, doing it virtually, I got patients actually across the pond. I've seen people in other countries and across this country and stuff, and we face-to-face just like this. And then we can do a lot of things virtually. So, I don't have to necessarily be there. But yeah, it really makes all the difference in the world because, again, it gives them access. And they don't have to make an appointment months in advance, then go down to the office. They make an appointment for a time. They might see the doc an hour and a half later. And then in there, they get that 7.6 minutes. Yeah. They wear the little, the paper gown, and they always walk out with that little, square white slip of paper. Well, here, guess what we can do? I've had patients show up in their, we'll sit there and we'll sip a cup of, Joe and, talk in our house coats. Well, I don't wear a house coat, but you know what I mean? So it's a lot of fun. It's a comfortable atmosphere, lowers blood pressure. So, yeah, I see them virtually. It's a great model. It really works good.
That's cool. And then you also are able to facilitate the tests.
Oh, sure.
Virtually as well, but by partnerships with labs. And
Yep, got different laboratories across the United States. And basically I can, if a patient needs a particular lab, I write a script for it. We email it to them. They go to the lab and they have whatever tests drawn there. A lot of times I actually have the labs actually send the kit for collection, whether it be your poop or your pee or your spit or your blood. You can do that as all comfort of your own home. And we send those directly to the patient. And you complete those. You overnight them. It's already prepaid, and they get your secretions, and they do their stuff, and then I get the results, and then we set an appointment. We go over those. So it works really convenient that way. So everyone has access. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think that's important, is that you actually spend the time to go through the results with people, as opposed to you just look at it and say, "Oh yeah, you're okay," like a lot of doctors will do. You actually will spend time and go through what each thing means in the results and help the patient understand
That's it.
The uniqueness of them.
Yeah, and see, keeping them as a singularity, it to me, it's like every single patient is a new blockbuster movie. It's not something I've seen before, so it never gets old, So it's like the excitement of going and getting the popcorn and your soda. Yeah, we can eat those things from time to time, and snuggling up to this new story that's been produced. So it's always exciting for me. It never gets old, and it's a new drama, or it's a new comedy, or sometimes it's a little sci-fi. But when I work with patients, I go, man, this is a new story that's being told. It's a new book, and then of course I get to be the chapter towards the end. So it's fun, man. I'm so blessed in what I do, and I just really enjoy working with patients and spending that time. It doesn't get old for me. I mean, it gets frustrating because people are resistant to change. Sure. Yeah. But at the end of the day, man, when I see miracles happen, we'll call them miracles. We don't use the cure word, but when we see resolution of chronic complex diseases, if you will, man, it feels good. There's nothing more. It's like seeing your kids score, or graduate. It's awesome, and that's what I want patients to feel, and to hold themselves to that higher bar of care, not just you're a number and a folder. You go in an office and here's a clipboard and that's it, one complaint at a time.
Well, I guess it's probably very cool for the patients as well, for them to actually understand the root cause of whatever, the fatigue, the headache, the digestive problems, whatever, so they can make adjustments in their own life and see how their lifestyle choices are impacting their health and wellness on a daily basis. So I'm sure that's like very empowering and exciting for them too, because like it opens up a whole new world. Yep. Then they're like, oh, I didn't realize that I had this much control over my wellness and my health.
That's it. Once people cut through that noise and confusion, I say, in the info space, and they realize that these little simple changes in their air quality, their food quality, their their fluid quality, their how to rest, how to move their body, and things of that nature. Oh man, little changes. Think about it. It's just like, man, if your loved one just popped in for a visit, just that little visit or that little extended hug or that high five with your buddies or that little girls' night out kind of thing. Little things make all the difference in your world. Now, if you take that same mechanism and apply it to your health and these solid corrective actions, oh man. That's just it. But the problem is people either get deer in the headlights, it's too much, because they don't know how to navigate through the system. Where do I start? Right. Or they have all these conflicting views. How do you sort through it, much less apply it to me? So that's really
what the Truth About Wellness is about, is how do you sort through all the noise and the conflicting things from this side of the line and that side of the line. This person says this diet or this nutrient or whatever, you need to do this, and this person says you need to do this, and then they're constantly conflicting.
That's it. My thing is it's don't focus on the item, the test, the supplement, the behavior. Focus on you and make the litmus test. Does it apply for you? And then you can, of course, try it. It's a trial and error kind of thing. That's how things are always achieved for their greatest. No one just instantly knows what to do. Heck, you never know where you're going till you get there, right? So just getting in the car, you don't know what's going to happen along the way. So it's okay to realize that. Don't have a preconceived notion of what this is, and never get tired of experiencing new things for you. You can call it experimenting, but I call it experiencing. It just adds to it. You can either add it to or go, no, that really doesn't work for me. I know people, they're deathly allergic to coconut oil and avocados. And everybody now is like, oh man, they're so wonderful. Yeah, I love them. Both of us, yeah. Oh man, they're great on my skin. Yeah. But the thing is, but some people, allergic reaction. My sister in particular, she cannot eat an avocado. And I go, man, you poor soul. I know people that can't do anything with coconut. I know some people that are, highly reactive to glutens. I can actually eat gluten. My biome in my inner tube is strong enough to handle it. I'm a good old boy. We're going to have a biscuit from time to time. I might get kicked out of the house, and there's no way I'm not going to have a tortilla or some flatbread or some focaccia.
Good biscuits and gravy.
Oh man, you know what I'm talking about? People say, "What's your blood type?" And I say, "Gravy." No, so it's a Southern joke. It's more funny. But no, that's just it. Is everybody's got to find out how it applies to them and keep questing. But there are some stuff that's a little what I call fruity biscuits when you start getting into different things. When I was going to college at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, I actually lived in Virginia Beach, Virginia, right there on 34th Street, and I was just a few blocks down from a place that's pretty famous in the the holistic world called the Association for Research and Enlightenment. So Edgar Casey's little place, and spent a lot of time there. Getting into some of that kind of fruity biscuit stuff. There's a famous store right down there called the Heritage Store. And long story short, I mean, literally, I actually worked at a restaurant right next door to the Heritage Store on Laskin Road in Virginia Beach, Virginia, called Waffles and Things. That was my one job. 4 o'clock in the morning, I was in there flipping pancakes, cracking eggs. They had to pay for school.
Speaking of the fruity biscuit stuff, it's actually good that you've been exposed to that kind of stuff so that you can, understand the type of stuff that people, they see on a daily basis on the internet and people in different circles talk about, so that you can help them have like a balanced understanding of, where does this come into play? Yeah,
and it's only alternative. I don't practice alternative medicine, but things that are considered alternative are only that because they're not mainstream. I mean, like for instance, the internet was alternative to other communications that we had at the time, right? And the cell phones were alternative to hard lines. I mean, that term is just, it's really goofy, and it's only I tell people, what we call alternative medicine that actually is used by mainstream physicians. Medicine. It's so just because somebody calls it acupuncture or an herb or a homeopathic or something like that, it's alternative view, but it doesn't negate its ability to work. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There are certain things that are alternative that work in a very small portion of the population, and so of course I don't use a lot of those, but things that do work. They work, and I don't need a scientific study or all these peer-reviewed people, which is a whole other topic we could talk on one day. Just read an article on that this morning. I don't need them telling me what works.
Right.
If I work with tens of thousands of patients, it's not anecdotal. It might be for somebody else, and that's okay. Yeah. But for me, it works because I did enough working with patients to find their, embracement of category of one. Then, there you have it. So it works out pretty cool like that. But yeah, the balance of exposure to the different realms is really where the most open mind comes. If you think about Einstein when he said E equals mc squared, I actually have a collection of minds that were put down. Now, like Thomas Edison, was he persecuted, and boy did he persecute a lot of people, right? Yeah. Remember, he made fun of Tesla, right, with his AC current, because he had his DC current. He was AC. Well, that's alternative current. No, it's alternating current. But isn't that a neat contrast? There is that. Here was, this man. He was the man. Mm-hmm. Bringing an elephant downtown and electrocuting it with alternating current to show how dangerous it was. Well, guess what? We see who won on that end, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So it's okay, man. I don't mind that kind of stuff, and I want people to embrace that same type of an approach in their lives when they want to try some stuff. It's pretty cool.
So you've seen how many patients would you estimate that you've seen over your career?
Boy. I did the number one time. I got a good friend of mine up in, he practices functional medicine too, up in Ocala, Dr. Hall. I love him, man. And asked him how many, he's been delivering babies for 30 years, and his number was like 20,000 babies. Man, you gotta be kidding. But so I did the numbers one day because, man, I just really look up to him, and I'm going, I got to think about how many patients have I seen. Well, I'm thinking, okay, if I did 10 patients a day, 5 days a week times whatever, it's a big number. It's I tell people it's more than 10,000.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit more than that, but I try not to do.
The good thing about that is you're able to recognize patterns from all the actual testing that you've been doing with these folks over the years and seeing some of the common stuff. What are some of the common ailments or issues that have, I guess, come across your desk or into your office?
The number one thing, and I'm asked this question, fatigue, that's number one. Why?
Really?
Because so many diseases, if you will, or disharmonies, reactions in the body, one of the symptoms is fatigue. Fatigue is not a disease unto itself, even though we have, a code for it. Mm-hmm. I love those ICD-9 codes. So we can give it a number and bill for treatment of it. But again, man, it's like water. There's all kinds of sources of water. And the thing about it is so I see that quite a bit in everyday stuff. People, insomnia, or, of course, musculoskeletal pain. I see allergies to things. Lots of GI stuff when it comes to either constipation or loose bowels or intermittent bowels, bloating, fullness, distension, things like that. Mm-hmm. I see people with, complaints on their skin and stuff like that. So those are the big common ones. So, fatigue and insomnia, gastrointestinal stuff, skin things. And then, of course, weight. But again, really all those things are connected. They're all interrelated. And so, again, I don't treat, dermatitis or arthritis. I treat Jeff or Susan or Bill or, Jessica. You see what I mean? I actually treat the people. I don't care about the names of these diagnoses with these little, 3 to 5 digit codes.
Well, and these things are, a lot of times, are just a manifestation of an imbalance in another part of the body, a lot of times, right?
100%. Mm-hmm. That's it. If you have excessive body weight, it's because you have a deficiency in health. If you have something manifesting as a symptom, it's because you have an imbalance in multiple areas of the body for multiple reasons. It could be one thing, simple, and oftentimes it is not. But and most of the time, it's complex. And just solving that riddle is the key.
Well, let's get into the balance protocol and your approach to solving the riddle.
Sure.
As you say.
Well, after seeing a lot of patients for a lot of years, the thing was I had to figure out a systemized approach to applying functional medicine principles to people in a regurgitatable way. And so they don't always have to come and see me. I love to teach a turnkey method of doing it. So once you learn how to ride a bike, you're good to go. Same thing when it comes to writing or typing. Remember typing class and learn to go through those, and then you learn the keyboard. But yeah, of course, some people want to still go back to the 2 fingers. That's okay. But the point is that there's a graduated method of doing it. So the balance protocol is not a set system in the sense that this is what you do and everybody should do it. It's a protocol. In other words, it's a method to discover you. It's a framework or a GPS to navigate you. And it's backed by what I call my 2-3-5-8 framework. So it's really simple.
2-3-5-8 framework.
2-3-5-8 framework, which is an interesting if you're into numbers and things like that, it's the golden mean or golden spiral or Fibonacci stuff. But the thing is when it comes down to it, I tell people where do you start? Right, like in your business, okay. Well, how do I start? With what where do I look? Well, you're providing that. So I tell people, okay, the number 2 is 2 questions. What do you need to add, and what do you need to take away? I mean, how profound, really? That's it. Most people go, well, let's say I have a headache. Well, what can I take? Most people are thinking, okay, well, do I do an ibuprofen? Do I do an naproxen? Do I take some Tylenol? Or is everybody's a little different, right? But what I say, well, what do you need to take away? You need to ask yourself, well, what might have triggered the headache? What's at the root of it, right? What could be causing it? And all kinds of things can manifest as a headache: a food allergy, a microbial infection, a smell or toxic exposure to something, deficiency in nutrients, or a psychological stress, right? One of those things, and we'll get to that in just a second. So you got to always think add and take away, add and take away. Constantly be running those 2 questions through yourself. Don't just stick to one. Like people go, oh, I'm overweight. What do I gotta start taking away? Well, I gotta exercise more and eat less. Well, that doesn't work. And well, here, what pill do I gotta take? So no, you have to think about add and take away. But then it's like, well, what do you want to do? About how you go about it. And that's where the 3 comes in. It's what I call my 3 phases. So some people are like, oh man, I heard detoxification is fantastic for headaches or psoriasis. So like, well, I'm going to start doing these detoxes, these 10-day detox, the 21 detox, the 30-day, the 60-day, and the 10-day, the 1-day, the 2-day. There's all these different detoxes. Well, I love detoxification. I actually call it detoxification / biotransformation. There's a difference. But the thing is you don't start detoxing. Right. So in other words, like if you're remodeling your house or trying to correct something, you just don't start ripping out the walls. You got to figure out we need to go and get the tools first, and we need to get the supplies to fix it and things like that. So there's an order. So the 3 phases are to nourish, balance, and then purify. So if ever you have a disharmony or a disease or a complaint, you want to focus on adding and subtracting to support nourishing. Like, so what, let me eat more green leafy vegetables. Let me get more, non-starch veggies. Do I need some lean protein in my diet? So what do you got to add? What do I got to take away so my body can be nourished? Alcohol, refined sugar, a lot of these things that aren't new and shocking ideas. But then also, how can I nourish my mind? Right? So a lot of times people forget that you need to your body needs to be fed. I point to my head and I go, this thing needs to be fed too, So good information, positive affirmations, self-help stuff. So you see, add and take away. What do you got to take away from your mind? Well, watching the news late at night. Or news altogether, right?
That's true, yeah.
Right? So see how that nourishing works, both for your body and your mind. Then number 2, then you start balancing out things. It's a give or take. That's when, oftentimes, your wallet or your budget comes into play. Some people are like, well, I need to move more. Well, you don't necessarily have to have a gym membership, but for some people, it's the right way to go. Exposure to different stuff. You need to start balancing out of your life, getting rid of, petrochemicals and burning, stanky candles in your thing, Glade plugins for everything, and all this kind of chemicals. Balance that out. And then, of course, you have to think about, well, how can I balance, say, like hormones? Well, hormones are balanced based upon not just stuff you put in your mouth, but how you move your body. Right? So we know that hormones respond to how you physically exercise or not, whether it's be yoga or Pilates or high intensity interval training or CrossFit or different things like that. They're going to affect your hormones. So you need to balance that. Not too much working out, but definitely just don't sit there. So you see how that works?
Right.
But before you start doing all that, You better nourish, the body. Give it, the nutrients that it needs. Then the third phase is that's when you detoxify the body, or purify. That's when you start pulling things out, because you start detoxifying before you got things fixed in your life. You're just going to be putting those things back into the case. You start detoxing your body before you're nourished and well enough to handle the byproducts of pulling this stuff out of tissues. You're going to have some problems.
Actually, if somebody does a detox before they nourish, then they could cause even more problems.
You can potentially, and I actually see that more times than not. They'll actually precipitate other injuries or irritations that prevent them, or actually to buying into the fact that, wow, this actually is effective. All I know is when I did this, it made me sick. Well, I thought I was nourishing because I was detoxing by juicing and blending. And well, it's not quite like that. You can use that mechanism to do it, but that's what's interesting. That's the aha. That's why you can do that. So before you start removing all this stuff out of your diet, add stuff. So before I start telling people to just dramatically jump all this stuff out of their diet and cause headaches because they're not drinking, their caffeine or their soda every day or this kind of stuff, I go, start building your body up. The analogy I give, Jeff, is like, I'm a parent, right? I've got 2 girls, and they're learning to ride a bike, right? And if they fall over, the first thing we don't do is immediately start tending to the wound, purifying, right? The first thing we do is we nourish them. We go, it's okay, here, let me give you a little bit of hug and things like that. And then we move on to balance. We go, hey, it's okay. You're learning to ride a bike. You're going to be fine, right? Here, let's clean the wound out a little bit. Let's get you whatever, right? And then, okay, now we got them all calmed down, and we go through that process, and then we, purify. Then we start, clean it out, put some E&D ointment on it, put a Band-Aid. You see the process? So that mechanism, I know that's kind of a crude example, but that's the way we should really approach it. So there's real power in doing things in the right order.
Right.
Then the 5 thing is, or what I call the 5 causes of every disease known to mankind. And they can be one or multiple ones of these kind of things. So we know that having a deficiency in a certain nutrient can cause a disease. The famous ones are vitamin C for scurvy and vitamin D for rickets, yada, yada. But we know that nutrients deficiencies can cause problems. If you don't have enough B12, folate, or iron, all nutrients, you can have problems, manifesting as what? All kinds of things. Muscle cramps, headaches, lethargy, menstrual imbalances. So nutrients deficiency is one of the first causes. The second cause, of course, can be microbial. So bacteria, virus, fungus, those guys we know cause problems. Number 3, it can be toxins, toxic exposure to any type of chemical. We know that toxins, bisphenol A and phthalates and stuff, they cause disease in different mechanisms, but they're causes, so toxins. Fourth thing...
You mentioned like Glade plug-ins and like scented candles in your house like that.
All you're doing is pumping in bad stuff. If you have a plug-in that smells like a watermelon or a banana or a coconut and there's not a watermelon or listen. I mean, come on, man.
Chemically...
That's it.
Chemically synthesized smells. Yeah.
Cyanide tastes like almonds. So, how we know that, I don't know, because people have,
who tasted it.
who left around and say, oh, it tastes like almonds, and they're out. But I love fun little cliches. Funny. But so then the fourth thing are allergens, right? So we know that, say, one that's popular now is like gluten. That prolamine, that protein, boy, it can wreak havoc for a lot of people. We know that it's linked to schizophrenia and ADD and depression and weight gain and irritable bowel, not just like celiac. I'm talking about it kicks off a lot of stuff. So allergens to things, right? It could be in any amount of things. And then number 5 is stress, believe it or not. Now, I call it physical or psychological, real or perceived. Because listen, a lot of times, and this is a very common thread in the CSI approach that I go with patients is I've been depressed or no libido. Well, when did it start? Well, back in 2008. Well, what happened in 2008? Well, we go through their story and go, well, you were in a car accident. And they go, well, yeah, but that's not going to affect, my parts down there. And I go, well, hold on a minute. Yeah, it is. If you're in a traumatic brain injury or a concussion, it can mess up things like your pituitary, right, or your hypothalamus through damage. I work with a lot of military and special forces guys, and we see that. And the reason why their hormones are off Their root cause is because they had a physical trauma. You have a big wave of energy or a sudden stop in your body and think that everything inside is just floating around is going to be fine. Not at all. So it could be a physical trauma, a slip and fall, not just manifest as in a physical pain. It can throw off systems biology. Then, of course, stress, psychological things, mental abuse, sexual abuse, spousal different problems, stress, money, finances, right? Kids, we want to pull your hair out. That's one of your causes of hair loss is kids. But, right? But the thing,
you're actually pulling your hair out.
That's exactly right. That's my poor doctor humor. It's about as funny as it gets. But the thing is when it comes down to it, some people like myself can handle a lot of stress, so it might not be real to me, but my body's affecting it. So it really comes down to one of those 5 things. That's it. So everything that we've been exposed to can really do that. So electromagnetic radiation or EMF, can be a stress. So just about anything can be broken down. Everything, actually, not just about. And be so confident to say you can relegate it to one of those 5 things. So whenever you have a disharmony, you want to think through those 5 causes. What one or multiples of those do I need to add or take away? In what order? That's how you reverse the disease. The 8.
So before you get into the next one, so you talked about toxins and stress. You worked with a lot of folks in special forces and in the military. So you've I heard a different podcast with actually one of your clients who was in the military.
Yeah.
And you discovered that a lot of his issues were due to like the toxins from all the explosives and those types of things that they were continually around, even from practice firing and that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure his first name is Jeff. Just an awesome guy, man. Just one of those rare, SF guys that actually kind of has a, call him out, but not a soft side, but he's just such a good old boy. I mean, just a nice fella, man, just highly intelligent, so motivated and articulate. But of course, he was stuck in the systems of, what the military has to offer. But yeah, a highly trained guy when it comes to, what they call breaching, and so he was, and he would train other special forces operators, and basically, when you're around explosions all day, boom, blowing up doors. I mean, those concussions, they affect you after a while. There's certain weapons in the military that you can only fire so many times in a day because they know it physically, boom, hit you.
Plus inhaling the smoke.
Oh, that's right. And he's a firearms instructor, right? So close quarter combat stuff. And I mean, every time you send a round downfield, a little bit of lead comes out. All that burnt powder and stuff. Those are chemicals. Remember, this is chemistry. So you breathe that stuff in, and your body has to deal with it. If you have enough nutrients, your body can handle it. If you have slow, metabolization based upon your genetics, all the things that we already talked about, it can affect you in different ways. And that was one of the cases with him is he couldn't solve the riddles based upon what he was told, because when you go to that type of care that's offered our veterans, is really not state-of-the-art. It's not functional, and they missed a lot of stuff. But we went through this 2, 3, 5, 8 method, and I showed him how to start, solving the case. And he was a very diligent patient and would just become a huge advocate. And
well, that's fascinating too, because a lot of people don't think about environmental factors, like even in their everyday, in their home or at their job or whatever they're doing consistently over and over on a daily basis, what they're exposed to.
Sure.
And
that's
what I like about your approach.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. The thing is I see people oftentimes will say stuff like, well, show me the scientific blah, blah, blah. They pull the little string on the back of what I call the Aflac duck. Tell me that. And I go, well, hold on a second. It might not necessarily know that we know that air fresheners are causing disease. I'm not saying they're causing disease. I'm saying they're contributing to it in some people's cases, you see? Yep. So it's a part of the riddle. I'm not pointing the finger, because you have to determine it. But again, it's about, that's why I call it the balance protocol, because you have to balance the in and the out. You don't have to be pure. You don't have to think that, well, man, I'm going to, have a cocktail, or, oh my goodness, I can't have this, chocolate chip cookie. It's not about moderation. It's about balance. And your balance is different than everybody else's. So there's no way to determine moderation for you, really. You got to find out what you can afford at any given time. It's like your balance. So, yeah, your environmental inputs is what I call them. That's the system number 1. You got to take a look at of the 8, number 1 is environmental inputs, all the things that come into, that thing. So, what you eat and what you eat, drink, and breathe, and are exposed to, and things like that. So you've got to take a look at that environment. Then number 2 is, what your digestion system is, your gastrointestinal. So it's going on in your inner tube. So what I call from the hooter to the tutor. Right? So you got to think about what's going on in there. That is a major chemistry. Some people have said 70 to 80% of your immune system is in there. All the responses are all mediated by what you feed the body. So that chemistry is where it starts. People call it the gut, right? So we hear about leaky gut and different gastrointestinal disharmonies. There's always a component there for any disease, quite honestly. I mean, because it is everything that's uniquely us is all that. So we take a look at that. Of course, number 3 is the mental and spiritual aspect of the person. Yep, I'm one of those docs that believes in, the power of prayer. I believe that, I have seen so many people, for whatever reason, whether we, want it to be something, out of this world that we can't understand, or it's psychological. All I know is I have enough experience to believe in the power of prayer. For those who don't want to go in that direction, well, then we can talk about meditation and spirituality. Hey, I'm fine with whatever you want to label it. All I know is this: the mind is so powerful, it's unbelievable. Dudes, we've been so nervous to ask a girl out, we get, loose bowels. Girls have been so crazy that they miss the period. So the brain is connected, and we know conclusively there are a lot of pathways we don't have to go into. So we know that the mind is there. And, I'm a huge fan of my 5-minute journal every day in the morning and at night. And I love writing things down instead of typing into the computer. And I love good books and music and things like that. The effect of those waves and different frequencies on the body, the harmonics are phenomenal. So, yep, I'm going to tell patients that's fine, and it's okay to cry in my office, right? So then, of course,
this is definitely helpful whenever it comes to like the stress factors.
Oh yeah,
in their life. That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, science can't prove why hugs work, but everybody knows they damn feel good. And there's a difference between a little hug and then a long hug. There's intent, and so there's things that we don't grasp that we have to get into. And then pets. Oh my goodness, man! My little prime time, my Manchester Terrier, love him dearly, and brings a lot of joy to me. Or I'll kiss my 14-month-old little girl. Oh my goodness! Talk about getting your cells and your DNA to respond. It's amazing. And actually, there's a lot of science behind it.
Yeah, there is a lot actually.
Then we move on to the immune and inflammation. We need to learn to support the immune system, and we're doing this in this order. And clearing inflammation in the body. In functional medicine, those 5 causes, which are not in functional medicine necessarily, but my 5 causes, all produce at an end product a type of inflammation, and that's why the body has to respond to it. And there's ways to mediate those. Then there's the structural and then muscle-skeletal systems of the body. Now, structural could be the integrity of your cells. So I'm not just talking about your muscles and your bones when I say structural. Structural of when it comes to proteins in the body. They have to be unfolded and reassembled, and DNA has to be made, and errors in that structure can be an issue. Then, of course, muscle-skeletal's got to come into play. I mean, the way you move your body and stretch and move and bend puts... your spine doesn't have a blood supply per se. It has that cerebral spinal fluid. You got to move to be stagnant, right? So if you're having pain, well, maybe it's because you just sit on your butt all day. How about you get up and walk and go ground in the grass with bare feet and drink some healthful green juice and get your electrolytics going back and your cell structure communicating. Isn't it fun?
I have to move like every single day, otherwise I get a little stir crazy.
Oh man!
If I don't get a sweat in at least once a day.
Amen. You think my mouth moves, you see my body. See, I'm not a big workout guy. I love to play. See, my thing is me and weights and kettlebells, and it's not my thing. I'll go.
I enjoy doing all that stuff. I enjoy going to the gym.
And everybody has their different thing. Yep. I like to go, swing a golf club at the range, or play ultimate frisbee, or do an obstacle course, or a savage race or something. See, so we all have our things, and it's fun. So it gets our bodies moving. Then I move on to oxidative stress and energy production, really getting down to our mitochondria and what's going on inside of our cells. That's what we got to take a look at, that system and how it affects so many things. If your cells can't respirate and make energy, you can't metabolize hormones, you can't signal ribosomes and different things like that to move the protein strands and reassemble and do things like that. So we take a look at that system. Then, of course,
that's the oxidative stress and energy production. That's like directly correlated to your diet.
Oh, huge. And guess what? It's also correlated to the 5 causes. Stress affects it. Microbes can affect it. Allergens can affect it. Toxins can, and nutrient deficiency. See how cool that works? So those 5 things can affect each one of these 8 systems in a different way. So that's why you have to look deeper. Then we move on to hormones and neurotransmitters. That's kind of, a lot of people jump right to, do I need thyroid, or do I need some bioidentical hormones, some progesterone or some DHEA? Well, listen, the body knows how to produce those, and before you can give those as a little thing. One of the things I've lectured for the last several years in the anti-aging realm, and work with a lot of compounding pharmacists and physicians that prescribe bioidentical hormones. They're fantastic. The thing is, though, is they need nutrients to work, to convert, and to bind to receptors. So just giving a hormone is not the answer, because you got to nourish. You got to make sure they have the nutrients to do their little chemistry.
So they don't have the proper building blocks to work with.
Yep. And they might be great at first, but then, oh man, how come they stop working? Well, you didn't support the nutrients, and you didn't support detoxification, because chemicals can also impede those. So same thing with neurotransmitters. Like I talked about, we can measure certain biomarkers for those and get things right. Your good bacteria and your gut biome has everything to do with the health of your brain, your neurotransmitters, and your hormones. So if it's off because your dietary consumption was off and you have deficiencies, it's going to manifest in you in hormone problems. Right? Isn't that cool?
Interesting. Yeah.
And then, of course, lastly, we get down to detoxification and biotransformation. We need to make sure that we keep our blood, lymph, liver, and kidneys, and of course, one that everybody seems to forget is our lungs. Right? That's a huge eliminatory organ, and so is our skin.
Yeah.
So again, if you're breathing funky things and burning herbs and inhaling anything less than pure air, you are contributing to disease. I don't care if it has a therapeutic or medicinal value to it or not, and we kind of know what I'm talking about. At the end of the day, you need to breathe pure, clean air. It's what your body's built to do. So you got to think about how our body detoxifies and the chemistry of just breathing, and same thing from our skin, lathering on all these other kind of creams and stuff. So that's it, Jeff. That's the 2, 3, 5, 8. 2 questions.
So let's go. So 2, 3, 5, 8. So it's 2 questions. So what do you need to add to promote healing and maintain health? And what do you need to remove that is taking away from your health? That's the 2.
That's it.
Then 3 phases. Nourish, which is healthful eating, positive mindset. Balance, which is lifestyle, physical activity, biochemistry.
That's it.
And purify, organs, tissues, cells. If people are wondering where I'm getting this, I didn't just memorize it. I'm actually reading it off of...
I'm like, wow, you're doing pretty good there, Jeff. That's right.
So if you want this list, you can go to dranthonygbeck.com and you can see it on here. And then the 5 causes, which would be nutritional, a nutrient deficiency or dietary irritants, stress, which would be physical, psychological, or environmental, toxins, biologic toxins, elemental toxins, or chemical toxins, microbes, which would be bacteria, fungus, or virus, allergens, which would be chemical, biological, or food allergens. And then the 8 would be the 8 systems: environmental inputs, gastrointestinal and digestion, mental and spiritual, immune and inflammation, structural and musculoskeletal, that's a tricky word, oxidative stress and energy production, hormones and neurotransmitters, and detoxification and biotransformation. So that's the 2, 3, 5, 8. This is 2, 3, 5, 8 protocol. Is that what you call it?
Well, just the 2, 3, 5, 8 framework. What it comes under is that's the framework of the balanced protocol. The balanced protocol is the approach of going through this, and there's all kinds of techniques that these actually manifest into, or what I call the 8 keys of the balanced protocol are the methods of how to go through those 8 systems in the right order by asking the 2 questions and ruling in or out the 5 causes. So that's the real framework. I mean, it's like that little pocket card that you can use to go, wow, okay, how do I approach this? The owner's manual, the little, the support documents that come with your new software of, how to, get to the root cause of disease, and then, of course, take solid corrective action in your life, and then, get to the highest levels of well-being. That's the method.
So you train other doctors on this framework as well, and how to implement it in their practice.
Yep, I do. That's what I've done now for the last 5 years, and it's been a lot of fun traveling the country and doing, of course, virtual conferences like this, but also in office things. Yeah, teaching them that method, because you have to. Functional medicine is fantastic. There's lots of organizations at that Institute of Functional Medicine, which I'm a part of their particular certification program now, which is very extensive and lengthy and challenging. And the thing about it is but so you learn that point of view, but then what is the approach to actually apply it is the keys here. So that's what I came up with, is these keys. And again, this wasn't something I created. It's more as I observed it. It actually came to an understanding. I go, wow, this is it. So patients can actually have that with them, and they can begin to start that process. So then they can actually give me information along the way.
Well, it makes total sense. I mean, the most people, they may have maybe one piece of this entire framework that they work with on a daily basis, whether it's for their own health or for if they're working with patients.
Yeah,
they may have just one piece of this. They don't take into account the whole framework.
That's right.
So this is brilliant. I love it.
And most things that you'll find in great places and different article sources and information things that are on the web and Facebook groups is powerful stuff. The key, though, is learning to sort through it, just like what your quest is with your endeavor with that site. And I think that's just freaking phenomenal. And hopefully I get honored to help you work on that somewhere. And then, just, how do I apply it? So you can read something great, but then be able to sort through it for you as an individual. I really want people to become self-centered, and not in a bad way, but that's it. You effectually, we've all rode on a plane as a parent, and they say, well, please put on the oxygen mask on yourself first before the kids. And any parent, we've all gone, and we have to struggle with that idea, but we know the wisdom behind it. You need to start with you if you want to start helping your spouse or your kids or your neighbors or your friends, your guy buddies or your girlfriends or your workout partners. Don't try to tell everybody what they need to do. Say, this is what's working for me, and I encourage you to quest through it too. And matter of fact, here's a framework you can operate within and help you get there. It's fantastic.
So let me ask you kind of a separate question that's related to this. So the whole kind of biohacking movement has been is becoming more and more popular over the last few years. I think Tim Ferriss was the one who kind of kicked it off with his 4-Hour Body book.
Yep.
So how I think that in the biohacking space, there's a lot of they don't have the entire framework to work with. I think that they're maybe just taking a little piece here, a little piece there, and seeing what they can do. What's your input on that?
Well, it for those of us who've kind of been around since day one, the actual term is the quantum self, and and I enjoy it quite a bit, because remember, I'm a cheerleader for people to embrace themselves as category 1 and then take solid corrective action. So when they're doing that and questing for how do they get the most out of them, I think that's fantastic. So I support that tremendously. The only difference is currently there are that term of biohacking is really being embraced by people who will go and spend $15,000 to be at a wellness test facility with electrodes stuck to their brain for several days and then come out with more points on their IQ scale. Well, that's great. Hey, knock yourself out. But here's the difference, though. Most people don't have $15,000 to go do that, much less the time. And the thing is so I want to make sure that people understand that biohacking doesn't have to be some revolutionary, science fiction type, taking needle core biopsies of your muscle, right? Or these extreme temperature kind of things. Or you don't have to do that. If you what this is a form of biohacking. How about you ask the questions, right? Do them in the right order. Assess these 5 causes and then apply them to 8 systems, and then there you go. You are hacking. And the thing is it's a really cool thing. So I embrace it quite a bit. I just want people not to let that term push them out, or to basically kind of bastardize the term and truncate it down into one little box of things. So yeah, these people out there, these guru type guys that are doing that fun stuff, I think they're very healthy to the market. I think they're very wise, and they're kind of inspiring people to do that kind of fun stuff. I just want people to realize that you can do a lot of stuff right there in your own home that doesn't require that kind of cost or gadgets.
So you, I think that your framework actually helps people understand how to do it for themselves way better.
Yeah. I'd like to agree with you.
Well, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, but you also offer blood testing, different levels of blood testing and lab testing for people who are, they may not necessarily be dealing with some major disease issues or chronic disease type stuff, but they do want to achieve optimal health.
That's it.
So you have a few different testing packages that you offer on that. Do you want to chat about that?
Sure, that's great. What I've found is that there are some baseline things. Just like you maintain your car, you got to rotate the tires, you need to change the oil, you need to vacuum, you need to wash it, you need to put a coat of wax on there. You don't just get a nice car and stick it in the garage and admire it. You want to get out there and use it. So with your body, you're going to do that. You need some maintenance, just like with your home. Okay, so you want to evaluate it, and that's the cool thing about our bodies is it can give us information if we take a look at it. So. There are, of course, there's just so many different tests, but I do have some baseline things that I like to do with the vast majority of individuals who just want to take a little look at where they're at. They're like, well, they might not be at their optimal self, but they could use a little bit more energy or sleep a little bit more quality or get a little bit more athletic performance or just cognition and things, engagement, and just different things that we need to experience on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I have a couple of packages. They're available through dranthonygbeck.com, and there's a couple of different ones depending on how deep you want to go and how many systems you want to take a look at. So we have an entry one, a level one, and then a middle, and then an upper one that's a little bit more comprehensive. So I like to at least start with the assessment of systems, when it comes to what your hormones are doing, your thyroid and different fun stuff like that, certain nutrient markers and vitamin D in your blood and that kind of fun stuff, and how your liver's clearing things out. A lot of fun stuff that way. It's pretty interesting. Then we like to move up to that plus really assessing your fatty acid status, your nutrient status, your metabolic pathways, deeper look into your hormonal pathways, and again going right through the framework, and then ultimately at the end, if people really want to get to a really nice biohack that's not really super expensive, is to all of what I just mentioned, plus take a look at food allergies and cross reactivity to different foods that you're experiencing and things like that. We take a digestive stool analysis. We look at your poop and screen it for parasites and bacterial infections and all kinds of fun stuff. So we really get we look at the blood biomarkers, but then we build on those with a little bit of blood and saliva or blood urine, and then we get the other ones when you come to all of them. So it kind of builds from there. So yeah, laboratory testing is a good place, because remember, disease never sends you a notice in the mail that it's coming, and we usually do get little warning lights on the proverbial console. The difficulty is oftentimes we just don't look at them, as the body is telling us little things are off, and you do get the clues. You gotta pay attention to them. And for those of us that don't have those, but we just know that we just don't quite have optimal, take a look. And the neat thing is that a lot of these are covered by insurance reimbursement, believe it or not.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you about that.
Yeah, they are. So, but what I do is I don't let third-party people who don't have the rapport that we have together get in the way. So basically I make these available to individuals across the country, and then they can submit it for reimbursement. Oftentimes get a vast majority of it reimbursed to them. So the cost of doing it is really not that crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool that they can get the data and then have their insurance cover it and get reimbursed.
I'm just one of the rare ones that are given access. You don't have to come see me in the office and do all that kind of fun stuff. But then what you do with that information is what's super critical, because there are places on the internet where you can get all these fancy tests, and then you log in and then you got all these cool graphs and landing pages and fun stuff. But the difference is where's that talk with a caregiver? Where is that seasoned mind that you can discuss it with? I can give you a report. Heck, you can go to all kinds of places and get some labs done. But then how are you going to cipher through how that applies to you?
Right.
And with all the lab tests that I provide and make available, they automatically get me. Not just not to downgrade different levels of education, but they're actually going to meet with me face to face, and then I will work them through what all the things mean and help them to apply corrective action immediately. Give them a way to start going through that balanced protocol and working through the framework.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially since you've seen so many people, tens of thousands of people over the years, that experience of being able to look at the biomarkers and the results from the testing to see what where should people be focusing their biohacking efforts or their nutritional efforts or whatever it is they're trying to accomplish.
Especially if you're already into like, say, you've decided to, I've had patients that are, cancer survivors, and they want to start, boom, into fitness competitions, or people go, man, I really enjoy CrossFit, and boom, I start pushing this. Well, the more you demand out of the output of a static state that you've been in for a while, the more you're going to up the ante on how many things you're going to need. I mean, it's like you invite more people over for dinner, you're going to have more trash, and you're going to need more plates and food. So you can do those things. You just got to know what you're working with. Without information, without the correct RSVPs, right? You can't plan. See, these are the analogies I use. In the South, we talk in pictures, but that's just the key. Is that there's greater information to have on the approach to do it. So I'm all for that. So I want people to be able to have some guidance along the way, and actually have a partner in their endeavors. And that's where I come into play. Whether you're an athlete, or a stay-at-home mom, or a blue-collar construction guy, I work with all of them. To me, you're a beautifully, divinely created human being, and I'd love to be their doctor and friend and help them along the way and graduate them out the door. So it's pretty doggone exciting stuff.
Very cool. So before we wrap up, you want to just talk about some of your nutritional formulas? You want to?
Yeah, I could do that. A little thing like that. The thing is out there in the world, a lot of us have been exposed to different products or pills, potions, and powders. Well, there's a lot of validity to them, but of course, with anything there's junk, just like automotives, right? There's different levels of quality of cars that drive us around, and there's nothing wrong with walking or taking the bus either, right? But at the end of the day, over the years, using different nutritional compounds, what we call orthomolecular medicine or botanical medicine, there is a need for the patient to do that. And there was a lot of different brands and places. I'd send people to the health food store or to a nutrition place or a vitamin shop or something like that, and they would just get lost in the marketing and the advertising and the fancy red and blue bottles. And I go, well, there's got to be a better way. And people, all these pill counts, people say, well, doc, listen, I don't want to be spending $400 a month on all these pills to swallow. Good heavens. And I go, well, it starts with diet, okay? What you feed your body. I don't even like the word diet. I only use it because it's a common term that people use, but it comes from eating, right? Eating. So, but then you need to supplement it, because oftentimes your cells and tissues are in a little debt, and you need a little bit to overcome that. Or your genetics, like I used this earlier, if you're not a good methylator because you have a nucleotide polymorphism, that your genetics don't allow you to methylate well. Well,
I don't know what that means, but it sounds good.
Well, the thing is you have a gene that allows your body to do something called methylation. It's so vitally important. We can talk about that some other time, but some people have a broken gene, and it's about 20% of the population. And you're going to need, you just can't necessarily eat enough in a time to get the results. So supplements are fantastic, but there's different quality. So back in 2005, I actually created my company called Helion Nutraceuticals, and we were dedicated to providing the highest caliber of nutraceuticals available on the market in complex formulas, so it reduces the pill count need. So many people go, well, I'm going to go get this, and this. I all read these things were great. My hair's falling out. I'm going to get some biotin. I'm going to get some zinc, and I'm going to get some this. And next thing you know, their pill count's up, and I'm like, ugh, and their cost got to be a better way. So I put it into, like kind of with I use this loosely, but you can put meal packages together, right? So it's really neat to do that. So I provided a quality of supplementation that is second to none, and we don't use anything that's not a nutrient in there, and just a higher quality available of supplementation. Again, these are supplemental to actions and a lot of things that we talked about earlier. But Helion Nutraceuticals really provides a go-to place for things like probiotic formulas, dietary and systemic enzymes, multivitamins and things of that nature, fish oil sources and joint formulas and things to help, thyroid and anemias. And I have a great superfood complex called Food of Life. So a lot of those things really are entrenched in people's programs already. They've done the self-help and go, well, I know I need to take a multi each day and some fish oils every day, and I applaud that. We just add to that a little bit more and give them a better quality and less pills in order to get therapeutic doses. And it just makes all the difference in the world, because quite frankly, with any market of things, or you start getting into some multi-level stuff, and the quality just goes down because it's an economy of scale. And so it really is one of those things. We all shop based upon price tag, and oftentimes we don't get the best quality because of that. Yeah. Well, we blend that into a good synergistic platform of all those benefits into one place, and that's what Helion was created for. Plus we're a zero impact on the.
And these are you use these with your patients.
Yep, I actually created this originally with Helion was only for licensed clinicians only. It wasn't even available on the open market. You had to get it, by physicians only. Mm-hmm. But the overwhelming response and low accessibility for people that didn't have a physician, they really needed the access to them. So I actually opened them up directly to the market. So they were exclusively formulated for physicians, but now they're actually available direct to the public, which is pretty awesome. That was that's awesome. A neat thing to do.
Very cool.
Yeah. So thanks for letting me chat a little bit about that good stuff.
You bet.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, anything else you want to share as we wrap up?
No, that's it. I mean, if people enjoy what we're talking about and they want to get more and they want some trusted sources, your endeavor and your site, I think, is going to be a fantastic source for that. I'm dedicated to the same avail, and we all have the opportunity to share that information. No one has to be the only megaphone for it. But if they want to contact me and possibly evaluate if I can help them in something they're trying to resolve, it's DrAnthonyGbeck.com, DrAnthonyGbeck.com. That's the one.
Very cool. And if someone is interested in your supplements, they can go to, HelionFormulas.com?
Yep, Helion, Helion formulas, plural.com, or they can access them through DrAnthonyGbeck.com as well. So they're there. They're even available on Amazon.
And so for the biohackers that want to, opt for the proper testing to get to understand themselves, to really know themselves, to know where to go from here, they can go to DrAnthonyGbeck.com. Is that the best place?
Yep, best place. Absolutely. Okay. So that way we can kind of create a relationship, and I can help them go through that. A lot of this stuff is really simple and straightforward to access. But again, the difference is I'm going to provide them with some knowledge and clinical time to help them sort through what they find out about themselves, and really just kind of support them to keep going even outside of me. There's a lot of fun stuff they can do in the biohacking world for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Well, thanks, Dr. Beck. I enjoyed it. It's been very educational and informative. I look forward to us connecting on future podcasts, videocasts, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely, anytime. And I'm sure we'll both be able to share this particular time together with both of our audiences. It's really super exciting, man. I'm flattered. Thank you so much.
All right, you bet, man.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya.
Wait, don't stop listening yet. Thank you for listening to the Balance Protocol podcast. Be sure to head over to DrAnthonyGbeck.com, where you'll find lots of life-changing information that will educate, motivate, and inspire you to your highest levels of well-being. There, you can get access to exclusive content, as well as download your 100% free Urgent Health Report. You can also use the contact page to ask your health questions and make requests for topics you would like covered on future podcasts. Until then, let's live life in balance.